Sunlight streamed through the attic's dusty window, illuminating dancing dust motes. Sarah navigated the labyrinth of forgotten treasures, trunks overflowing with old clothes and faded photographs. She ran her fingers along the worn spine of a forgotten book. A floorboard creaked under her weight. The attic held an eerie silence, broken only by the fluttering of pigeons outside.
What's this?
She stopped in front of a weathered cedar chest. Its brass lock was tarnished with age. Intrigued, Sarah knelt and lifted the heavy lid. The scent of mothballs and old paper filled the air. She rummaged through yellowed linens and baby clothes. Her fingers brushed against something hard and flat. It was a letter, tucked into the corner of the chest. The envelope was thick and yellowed with time. The ink was faded, but she could just make out the name John scrawled on the front. A strange emblem, a circle with a serpent inside, was embossed on the back.
A letter? What could this be?
Curiosity piqued. Sarah carefully lifted the letter and blew off the dust. As she turned the letter over in her hands, a shiver ran down her spine. The attic, usually just a place of forgotten memories, suddenly felt different. It was as if the air itself crackled with a hidden energy. The letter, she realized, held a story waiting to be told. The paper crackled like dry leaves as Sarah unfolded the letter. The ink was a faded blue, the handwriting elegant but hurried. It spoke of a secret society, its words laced with urgency and fear.
They call themselves the Serpent Circle. They operate in the shadows, their influence reaching further than anyone suspects.
The letter went on to detail a dangerous plot, names and dates swirling before Sarah's eyes. John warned of a coming darkness, a threat to the city and everyone in it. He pleaded with the recipient to expose the truth, to stop the Serpent's Circle before it was too late. But the recipient's name, along with the date, was lost to time, a smudge of ink where it had once been.
Who was John, and what had driven him to pen such a desperate message?
Sarah traced the serpent emblem with her fingertip. It felt oddly cold beneath her touch, sending a shiver down her spine. The emblem seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a silent echo of the secrets it held. The attic seemed to press in on Sarah, the air thick with unspoken words and long-forgotten fears. The letter was a tangible link to the past, a whisper from beyond the grave that demanded to be heard. She knew then that she couldn't simply ignore it. She had to learn the truth to unravel the mystery of John and the Serpent's Circle. The letter rustled in Sarah's hand as a wave of dizziness washed over her. The attic around her seemed to dissolve, replaced by the flickering gaslight of a bygone era. She found herself standing in a dimly lit study. Bookshelves lined the walls, their leather spines whispering tales of forgotten knowledge. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the room.
Is this the past?
At a sturdy oak desk sat a young man, his brow furrowed in concentration. He hunched over a piece of parchment, his pen scratching furiously. He was handsome, with sharp cheekbones and intense eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. This, Sarah realized, must be John.
Pauses, then resumes writing.
John paused in his writing, his gaze drawn to a photograph on the desk. It depicted a group of people, their faces blurred and indistinct, gathered around a roaring bonfire. They were dressed in dark robes, their features hidden by hoods. Only one figure stood out, a tall man in the center, his face illuminated by the firelight. He held a staff topped with a serpent, its eyes glinting menacingly.
Resume's writing with urgency.
A deep sigh escaped John's lips as he returned his attention to the letter before him. He wrote with a sense of urgency, his words a desperate plea for help. When he finished, he carefully folded the letter and tucked it into an envelope. He then retrieved a small, ornate box from the desk drawer and placed the letter inside along with the photograph. Sarah returned to the present with a gasp, the attic snapping back into focus around her. The air felt heavy, laden with the weight of John's desperation. She clutched the letter to her chest, her heart pounding. She knew she needed help, someone with the experience and resources to unravel the threads of this mystery.
I need Detective Roberts.
Her thoughts immediately turned to Detective Roberts, a gruff but brilliant investigator known for his tenacity and unorthodox methods. Sarah had met him briefly at a charity event, struck by his quiet intensity and sharp mind. She dug out his card from her purse, his name embossed in bold letters. Taking a deep breath, she dialed his number.
Listens intently. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning. Bring the letter.
His voice held a hint of intrigue, a spark that ignited a flicker of hope within Sarah. The next day, Sarah nervously entered Robert's office. It was sparsely furnished, but surprisingly cozy, filled with books and overflowing file cabinets.
Hands over the letter.
Roberts gestured for her to sit down, his gaze sharp behind his spectacles. He examined the letter with a practiced eye, his fingers tracing the serpent emblem.
This changes things. This could be bigger than we thought.
His voice held a hint of excitement, a sign that they were on the cusp of uncovering something monumental.
This emblem, it's the mark of a secret society that's been whispered about in hushed tones for decades. They call themselves the Serpent's Circle.
Detective Roberts peered through a magnifying glass, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up at Sarah, his eyes glinting with a mixture of intrigue and concern.
John was onto something big, something dangerous, and it seems he paid the price for it.
He reached into his desk drawer and retrieved a worn, leather-bound file, its edges frayed with age.
I've been tracking this group for years.
He opened the file and spread its contents across the desk. Among the newspaper clippings and faded photographs, one image stood out to Sarah. It was the same photograph she had glimpsed in her vision of John, the one with the hooded figures gathered around the bonfire. But this time the faces were clearer, the details sharper, and Sarah recognized the man in the center, the one holding the serpent staff.
His name is Edward Sinclair, a wealthy industrialist and philanthropist, at least on the surface. But rumors have circulated for years about his involvement in the occult and his connections to a powerful secret society.
He pointed to the serpent staff in the photograph.
That staff is more than just a symbol. It's rumored to be an artifact of immense power passed down through generations of the Serpent's Circle.
Sarah's gaze darted between the photograph and Detective Roberts, her mind racing. She recalled the urgency in John's letter, his warning of a coming darkness.
Could this Edward Sinclair be the threat that John had spoken of? And what was the significance of the serpent staff?
She knew she couldn't let fear paralyze her. She had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Days turned into weeks as Sarah and Detective Roberts delved deeper into the mystery of the Serpent's Circle. They pored over old police reports, interviewed witnesses who were reluctant to speak, and followed a trail of cryptic clues that led them down a winding path of secrets and lies. Just when they felt like they were hitting dead end after dead end, they stumbled upon a breakthrough. Hidden among John's belongings, they discovered a small, tattered map tucked away in the back of a dusty notebook. The map, drawn in faded ink, depicted a network of streets and buildings, with a large warehouse marked prominently in the center. A handwritten note scrawled on the back simply read, "The Serpent's Lair."
Could this be the key to unraveling the mystery?
Armed with this newfound information, Sarah and Detective Roberts set out for the warehouse, a sense of trepidation hanging heavy in the air. As they approached the dilapidated building, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in graffiti, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the lion's den. But she knew there was no turning back. The truth, she realized, often lurked in the darkest of places. The warehouse loomed before them, its silence broken only by the distant screech of a seagull. A chill wind whipped through the alleyway, sending shivers down Sarah's spine. She exchanged a nervous glance with Detective Roberts, his expression grim but determined. They had come too far to turn back now. The warehouse door creaked open with a groan, revealing a cavernous space shrouded in darkness. Dust motes danced in the faint beams of sunlight that pierced through the grimy windows. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. As their eyes adjusted to the gloom, they could make out shadowy figures moving in the distance.
Edward Sinclair?
Roberts' voice echoed through the empty warehouse. The figures stopped, turning to face them. A hush fell over the room, broken only by the sound of their own breathing. Then, a raspy voice cut through the silence.
You should not have come here.
A figure stepped forward, his features slowly coming into focus. It was Edward Sinclair, his eyes cold and calculating. He looked older than in the photograph, his face etched with wrinkles, but he still exuded an aura of power and authority. He held the serpent staff in his hand, its eyes glinting menacingly in the dim light.
John tried to warn people about you. He knew what you were planning.
Sinclair let out a dry chuckle.
John was a fool. He let his emotions cloud his judgment. He should have known better than to betray the Serpent's Circle.
This ends now, Sinclair.
Detective Roberts said, his voice firm and unwavering. He reached for his handcuffs, his gaze fixed on the older man.
You think you can stop me? I am the Serpent's Circle. I am inevitable.
He raised the serpent staff above his head, and for a moment the air crackled with a strange energy. But before he could bring the staff down, a figure emerged from the shadows behind him. It was another man, his face hidden by a hood. He grabbed Sinclair from behind, wrestling the staff from his grasp. Chaos erupted as the hooded figures in the warehouse turned on each other, their loyalties divided. Roberts used the distraction to his advantage, quickly apprehending the disarmed Sinclair. In the ensuing chaos, Sarah noticed the man who had disarmed Sinclair disappear into the shadows, the serpent staff in his possession. He was gone before she could get a closer look. With Sinclair in custody and his followers scattered, the threat of the serpent's circle was neutralized, at least for now. However, the mystery of the hooded man and the missing serpent staff lingered in Sarah's mind.
Who was he, and what were his intentions? Was he an enemy or an ally?
She knew that some answers, perhaps, were better left buried in the annals of time.